And it seems like that's worked, and now we're recording.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, what I'm going to do then is share my screen and just start with a really broad introduction to design. Give me 1 second. Okay, I hope people should be able to see some ideas there about what good design is. These are design principles from Dieter Rams, who is a famous designer. I guess he's a sort of a cult figure in the same way that Steve Jobs was, but from one generation earlier. But he was the head designer at Brown. I always confuse myself when I try to decide if that's right or not. But yes, at Brown. Sorry, let's stop sharing. And these were his ideas about how to do good design. So these are the kinds of things that we want everyone to have in mind throughout their design work in this class. And, you know, these are the kinds of things that might make a difference in your e-portfolios as well, for example. So I'm not going to just read out the whole list, but I do want everyone to think about being innovative. I think we don't want just a repetition of what's gone before. We really want interesting new ideas and your own ideas. There are a couple here, long-lasting and environmentally friendly. We'll talk a bit about some of these design requirements as we go through the module, but certainly that that people have in mind the society we live in and the planet we live on when they're designing, and try to make sure that they're designing for real people in real contexts. Those are important things to us in this module. This one I want to flag up is thorough to the last detail. I would say in general, the difference between the very best work we see in this module and the work that doesn't quite come up to those standards is often about the details. And it's about really making sure you've thought, you know, in coursework 1, how is everything going to fit together? How is it actually going to work? And questions like that, rather than having a kind of broad picture of what it's going to be without really focusing on the detail. And then this last sort of bullet point is an interesting one, is as little design as possible. You know, to some extent, we don't want things to be overly fancy or complicated. You almost want, with the very best designs, you forget that anyone ever designed them, and you just use them as though they were natural objects that had been around forever. So that's really a way to think about the ideal of design, is for people to forget that it's been designed. And then this is a second list, exactly the same question, but this is a list that the Design Museum put together about 5 years ago. And some things are similar and some things are different. I guess, again, political and social change changes lifestyles and can change lives. These are all things about, again, designing for real people and designing for the real world that we live in. So that's, you know, come up twice, which I think makes it an important thing. And then I guess, particularly as engineers on the edge of design, it's this one we all think of. Design should solve a problem. So you want to spend your whole careers as engineers looking at whatever you're working with or on, and looking at the world around you and trying to find things that you can make better, and then design ways to make them better. That's really the key thing from this class, I think, in the whole year. Isn't about Fusion 360 or CAD skills or anything like that. It's about seeing opportunities to make something better and then doing that. This is important. We're going to talk a bit about what's called design theory. It's it's not theory in the same way that there's a kind of control theory. It's mostly people talking. But nevertheless, it does have all kinds of interesting ways of structuring design and ways of thinking about design, and that's going to be really important. So first of all, most definitions of design share three attributes. The important things, design is a process. So one of the things we're going to talk about a lot is a set of steps that you can take as a designer to go through from your first thoughts of what you might want to design or what you might want to solve to actually coming up with something that does the job that you wanted. And that's really what we mean by the process is goal-oriented, that it's doing something that you wanted it to do. And that something that you wanted it to do is probably going to be to create something new or useful. So this I like to think is a kind of summary of what we want to teach in these design-focused classes. And then I guess one thing that Alessio and I talk about a lot, I think, is employability and really just making sure that you're taking on skills which are going to be useful in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time. And this slide here kind of talks a bit about some of that, it's a Danish set of ideas. In fact, it's now 20 years old, but it still stands the test of time, that as companies get more advanced and as they start to do things better, they tend to move up this design ladder. And at first you start with just not really thinking about design, that's step one. Then you say, okay, well, we need things to look right. So you have this form giving stage where you're designing really just to have something look like what it should look like in the end. And that's the stage where a company usually brings in some designers. And then those designers who the company brings in say, hang on, this isn't really design. Design is this process. And then, you know, that's where a lot of companies end up, that design is how they get from one place to another, and they follow all the steps that we're going to talk about in this module. And then there's this fourth stage, which I think is really still becoming more and more common, where that idea that design is a process that can do anything and that you can use these ideas very broadly becomes taken on not just by the designers, but by everybody in the company. And then what you find is design becomes this strategy that people are using these models of how to work through solving problems everywhere in their company. They're using it for their, you know, HR and for their ways of coming up with new ideas about what they're going to do to reward their staff, or ideas along those lines. And you can see in this Danish survey from 2003 to 2007, we went from 36% of companies at step one down to 15% of companies at step one. So this is what we're talking about, that the moving up the design ladder is happening now as we speak. And if you can be the kinds of people who talk the language of step 3 and step 4, of seeing design as a process that you can put in anywhere, then you're going to be very employable, because those are the kinds of high-level thinking skills that a lot of employers really like. I guess this is engineering design. I mean, that's the name of the module, and we're very aware that a lot of our students are here because you're really good at maths and physics, and that often is what leads people into being interested in engineering, is skills with those two subjects at school and an interest in making things. And then what we want to do is kind of pull out that interest in making things to go alongside the maths and the physics and the physical understanding. So this is an idea from 1973. This idea of subjective thinking, things that can't be immediately tested and that can't be immediately measured, is something we know we have to kind of coax some students through. And what you end up doing in this module is making judgments which are intuitive. And that doesn't mean just not putting in the work to do the testing or the understanding or the measuring. It means being aware that there's going to be uncertainty in the process. And one of the things that we have to tell people when we get to the assessment stage of this module is there are no perfect answers. We probably won't give out any 100% marks in the module this year in the way that some people do get 100% in maths. And that's just because you can always envisage a better design, a new design. And that's part of the kind of intuition and disconnect from engineering that we're going to have in engineering design. So this is the same thing again, but this is from one of the textbooks that we've used historically as a core textbook. We're not using it as a core textbook this year, but if you can get to the library, you'll be able to go and look at this book. And I'll come back and talk about textbooks in a bit. So these are the kinds of things that aren't typical compared to many modules in mechanical engineering and in advanced vehicle engineering. There's no definitive formulation of the problem. We can't immediately write down an equation to get ourselves started because there is no equation. We don't know what the actual problem we're trying to solve is, and specifying the problem is a part of the design process. There are going to be inconsistencies. There are going to be things that don't quite add up. There are going to be places where you have to make trade-offs. Formulations of the problem are solution dependent. That's a slightly complicated way of saying, depending on how you solve the problem, you may come back and then see the problem in a whole new light. And so one of the words that we'll use is that design is iterative. It involves going around in circles where you solve a problem and then that helps you to come up with a new problem, and then you solve that one and then you come up with a new problem, and you keep on building in that way. We're going to talk a lot about proposing solutions and coming up with ideas, and that's a means of understanding the problem. And again, as well as there being no definitive formulation, exactly what I've just said, there's no definitive solution to the problem as well. So here is that word iteration that I just mentioned, and that's really made clear in this diagram on the right, that you might start off by understanding the problem by doing background research. You know, one of the things that we hope everybody's done for coursework 1 is to really read the IMechE specifications in some detail. And that's the exploration stage where you're learning what you need to know. Then you're generating ideas and you're evaluating ideas, and you're going round and round in that loop, iterating every time, so that the ideas you evaluate help you to come up with new ideas, new proposals, new ways of structuring the problem. So I said I'd finish this sort of mini lecture, these are the last 2 slides, by talking about textbooks. I'm going to jump one forward and then come back to this textbook slide. So these 2 books here are available in the library. I know not everyone at the moment can make it to the library, so we've got online resources as well. These are the ones that I think you want to have in mind maybe next year for your final year projects, because they talk you through processes in a very step-by-step way. The detail is all here, and the way of structuring design thinking is all here. But I will say both of these books are perhaps just a little bit dry, and some people even find them slightly boring. They're more like engineering textbooks in a way than like design textbooks. So what we've also got and linked as the core texts on the VLE are some books that are just a bit more interesting and fun, I guess, and that, you know, they're the kind of books that certainly Alessio and I have read because we just think they're really interesting, and then we've got a lot from them that we can build into this module, for example. So I just want to go and look at those two textbooks a little bit as the next stage of the class. But what I'll do just for a second is to stop sharing my screen and just throw it open to any questions or ideas or thoughts at the moment. Okay.
Can I add something? It might be cheesy.
Yes, of course.
I'm glad that you're going to be showing universal principles of design. When Ben shows this class, you'll see it's for me, a great example of actually great design in a book. Each principle, and I think it's been updated to about 125 principles or something like that. There's a 2-page spread for each one. So one is graphic based, and then the other side is just very bite-sized chunk bits of text. And it's probably the most digestible book I've ever come across, where it's a joy to read. And obviously the designer, the engineer, whoever has been behind the thinking behind this has really thought about how to get across lots of information, 125 separate principles in a really concise way. And you'll see hopefully in a moment when Ben shares the screen. But I just wanted to share that. It's a great example of book design.
Great. Well, that seems like a good moment to share the screen, so that's what I'll do. This is where I have to apologize after Alessio's fantastic introduction to this there. I can't work out how to show it as a 2-page scrolling view. I can only, in this particular format, online, see 1 page of it. So
I spoke too much, Ben. I'm sorry.
You'll have to imagine that you've got the paper book in your hands and you can see it in a 2-page view. I think probably you could download it as a PDF and then you'd be able to have that 2-page view as well. So I'd recommend everyone goes and looks at it. It's linked from the VLE. Actually, I can just show you that immediately. So as always, the reading list is up here in the top right on the Moodle site. If you click on it, you'll go to the reading list. And then these are the 5 books we've said are core reading. And the top 2 are the ones we're going to talk about now. And if you click on those books, you'll be able to go through and look at them. So going back, you can see these are the kinds of things, the 125 topics that this book talks about. I've just picked out a couple that I'm going to jump to, just to give you a flavour of it. I want to go to page 76 first. So the reason I picked this one out is because it's in the textbook and it's what I hope I've just been saying in a way, that there are different parts of a cycle to creating something or to designing something. First of all, you might do all these things to find out more. So that's where we said you might read the brief from the IMechE, but you might also do research into what materials are available or what components you could buy in cheaply or all kinds of things like that. Then here design is one part of the 4 stages they're listing here, but again you'll see this word iterations that we've been talking about, and that means going back and redoing things based on what you've learned and going round in circles. Yeah, Arjan. I saw a hand go up briefly. Okay, I'll leave it for now, but do jump in if you want to. And again, feel free to put things in the chat if people want to do that. And then the other thing that I like here is they talk about development and testing. And again, we're going to come back and keep looking at this, but it's not quite enough in this class to just do the design stage. We also want people to be trying to find ways to actually do some kind of tests on what they're doing. And that could be simulations, or it could be testing a prototype, or it could be what we call analytical models, where you're doing some of the maths from first year solid mechanics, for example, or first year dynamics, or even what you're working on right now. So all of those things are important too in this class. And then with this book, this is what Alessio was really talking about with the lovely 2-page view. This is the left-hand page, and it gives you the kind of text explanation, and then it gives you examples and ways of thinking about things and visualizations on the right-hand page. So I'm going to jump to my next example that I just want to look at, which is page 98. The reason that I want to flag this one up is just when I was looking through this book in preparation for today, this is one I'd forgotten all about, and I thought, oh wow, that's useful. That helps me to design lecture slides, and it helps me to understand some of my own research as well. And it's this idea that there are 5 ways to organize information. You don't have to believe that there are exactly 5 ways, but if you remember to think about all 5 possibilities here, you'll come up with some new ideas. We can really promise you that. And so the organizations here are category, time, location, alphabet, and continuum. And I'll leave you to read the words, but I will show you this visualization on the next page, which I really like. You can look at these 10 tallest structures, slightly out of date now, I think, but not far out of date, in different ways. And the different ways allow us to see different things about them. So, for example, if we look over time, we see that for a long time, from 1973 to 1999, the tallest buildings in the world weren't getting much taller. And then I think many of you will know that since then there have been a number of taller buildings built, particularly in, I think, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Taiwan. I'm aware of particularly tall buildings. So that's something we learn. And again, we learn, for example, that a number of these buildings are in East Asia when we lay them out on a map. And then we can start thinking about them by height or by function. And everything there has given us just some new understanding from looking briefly at 2 pages, and some new ways of thinking about data. And then you scroll through, for example, you start to see things that might relate to your coursework as well. So this flexibility versus usability trade-off, I think, is interesting in the context of coursework 1, because you're actually making something that doesn't need to be particularly flexible at all in a funny way. It needs to do one very specific, well-defined task. And that means you can focus an awful lot of your attention on usability and function. You don't need to build something that can go around corners, for example. So you can build something that's very good at going in a straight line. And again, just flicking through this textbook started giving me some of those ideas, making me think of new ways of approaching coursework 1. So we highly recommend that one. Again, just to go back to the title, that is Universal Principles of Design, and it's linked from the VLE, and it's got this subtitle, 125 Ways to Make Things Better. And then the other book that I put on that slide is this one, which is more generally about product design, and it follows a more kind of linear structure. So you start off at the beginning, there's a history, there's things, I guess then it goes into the steps that we've just talked about. So research and finding out what the specification is, actual design, and then how you go from having a prototype to having something that you can sell 100,000 of, or however many you want. Again, I've just got a few things that I want to jump to in this book, just to kind of get some ideas going. You'll see lots more photos of kind of classic bits of design here, which I think can be a really good place to start getting your own design ideas from. This is a very famous recent design that I think all of us think is very elegant. The UK 3-pin plug is considered very good electrically and very safe, but it has the complication that it's chunky and hard to make any more compact. And so this folding plug won a Design of the Year 2010, and you can see on the right hand side it looks like a standard UK 3-pin plug, and this image on the left is how it folds down to be something smaller and thinner that fits nicely in your luggage. So there's some of these kind of really clever ideas throughout the book here. I'll just show you quickly, because I'm aware I'm saying this over and over again, but it's the same stages of what needs to happen for a design to be good. It involves some design work and some research work, and then some actual building and thinking about how to take it to a larger audience. And that's broken down here in a way that is similar to what we've seen in other textbooks, and that we'll talk about throughout the module. Then just to lead us into the rest of the class, really, I'm going to jump to page 83. Because what we want to think about for the next half hour or so is drawing and sketching. And that's really just because it's so central to everything we do in this class. I like the sketch that they use to illustrate what sketching should be. You can see this is obviously done by somebody highly competent, probably a professional vehicle designer. In fact, it's done by Alec Isigonis, who designed the original Mini in 1958. And what I like about this is it's got the obvious shape of the Mini, and we can understand that. It's got all these nice labels, which is kind of him thinking directly onto paper, I would say. You know, I can't read his handwriting very well, I have to admit, but the important thing with a sketch is immediately to be thinking, what does this sketch tell me? What am I learning from it? And then to start marking some of that up. And then obviously he's got so enthusiastic about what he's been sketching in the main sketch that he's pulled out this subcomponent, this sub-sketch, to try and understand some of the detail. And, you know, I think when we talk about sketching in general, this kind of thing is what to have in mind. This is an engineering way of getting ideas onto paper and then immediately using that to help your engineering and help your own understanding. I think, again, I'm just going to stop sharing for a second and come back to the class. Alessio, what would you like to add there? You're on mute.
Thank you, Ben. That was really informative. I think the thing to think about, folks, that there's a lot to take away there, but I think what's really great was the slide about what good design is, and it's a variety of different things. And one of the things, the list will resonate differently to different individuals, but the thing that resonates with me every time I see that is that good design or good engineering can change behavior. It can change people's behavior for the better. Sorry, Peter?
Oh, sorry. Forgot my mic was on, sorry.
Okay, not to worry. And it was interesting also that good design is thorough to the last detail. And it just got me thinking about some things that I've seen in the past, which seem really clever. And I just want to do a quick screen share for no more than a minute or two. That kind of, I guess, encompasses what I'm talking about. you may have seen this before. So this was in the metro, I think, a few years ago. At this particular crossing, there were lots of car accidents going on, and pedestrians being run over. And so, you know, somewhere down the line, you know, city planners, maybe civil engineers, designers, mayors, whoever it is, politicians have been consulted about how to try and stop that. And what's quite clever is, in the end, it was just 4 tones of paint painted onto the tarmac that actually changed behaviour. So somebody had the bright idea of, actually, if we draw this zebra crossing so that it looks like it's floating, as a car approaches it, it just naturally slows down for fear that they're actually real blocks that you might actually crash into. And that's really clever. It's just a really clever designed solution. And there's other articles that you can find on the Design Council website that will talk about how design and engineering can change behaviour. I'm just going to whiz through these very quickly. The ones that I particularly like are the fun ones, and engineering and design should be fun. So, you know, little fun things like, you know, that image is almost self-explanatory, that you're trying to encourage behaviour of one side of the escalator is to walk and the other one is to stay static. The piano stairs is really interesting. So I think this was in a train station in Sweden. So to encourage healthy lifestyles, these stairs were made to be musical, and there's a visual cue there with the piano. So as you climb up the stairs, you can hear a sound, and it just encourages people to take the stairs as opposed to the escalator. This isn't the clearest, but I can just explain what's going on here. To try and encourage people to throw away cigarette butts, they've put a question at the top. So who's the best? Is it Barcelona or is it Real Madrid? Real Madrid seems to be winning there, but it's getting more people to about throwing their butts on the tarmac, on the floor. There's a kind of hopscotch thing here that you can hopscotch your way to a bin, which I think is quite funny. Over here we've got a little statistic. I'm sorry, I can't make that larger. So this is the statistic here says there's 6 tons of gum dropped onto London's West End each year. 6 tons. And so they have this kind of dot to dot where they encourage you to put your gum on this image. And if you place your gum on various dots, the image starts to appear. A slightly more political one here, so who sucks the most, and you can put your gum onto the image. And this is quite a famous one as well. So this did the rounds in various nightclubs where the problem was urine on the floors of urinals. And the solution was that some bright engineer designer somewhere thought, let's give people something to aim for. So they printed a fly on the inside of a urinal, and just, if not eliminated the problem, certainly reduced it considerably. And those are just a few examples of where a little bit of that clever thinking, that intuitive thinking, can just have some fun results. And I guess Ben and I just want you to think in terms of your future, where you might be set engineering problems, and we want you to be minded enough to consider maybe the less calculation-based ones, because sometimes, you know, you can actually, like the paint on the tarmac for the zebra crossing, you know, you don't have to integrate very clever technology in cars to get them to slow down. You can just use a lick of paint on the floor to do that, but it takes a clever engineer to think like that. So yeah, thanks for showing that slide, Ben. It certainly inspired me to think about what good design is, and I think good design being thorough to details and can change lives and behaviour, I thought those resonated with me.
Great. Okay, the next thing that I want to bring up is again, I'm going to share my screen if I can. We want people to start doing some sketching. And I think the best way, I guess this is where it's worth giving some context. In previous years, we've run in this class something called the 5-chair challenge, where we were trying to get students to design 5 different chairs in 5 different ways. And face to face, it's easier to give you materials, so we would give people pipe cleaners and plasticine and see what they come up with. But the first chair that we always wanted people to design was just to sketch a chair. And so I just want to share my screen. It's a bit gloomy in here potentially, but I hope I've got a visualizer, and those of you who were in my classes in first year will know that I like having 4 different colors available to do things in. I'm going to sketch in pen, and the reason I'm sketching live, Robin Jones, who runs some of our design modules and who's always been a central figure in the design courses at LSBU, always says just fill a page with ideas. That's the first thing that you want to do when you're sketching. So I would just want to start by, if we're sketching chairs, I guess I know I'm better at these kind of orthogonal representations of things, that everything's nice and rectangular, and I can draw a very boring chair based on cubes and cuboids, and I can be reasonably confident it'll come out. If somebody looked at it, they'd say that's a chair. And then I guess at the moment I'm just in the stage of putting things on paper, and I'm going to get braver, I know, with my sketching as I do more and more of it. The first one, I always do something nice and simple, and then I get slightly more complicated. So one of the things we can do is a kind of 3-legged stool, and that might give me some more ideas about that. And then the third thing I might do to fill a page is, rather than thinking about the chair, to think about a person and what people like. And I guess there I'm going to start with a curve, because people like that kind of comfortable aesthetic compared to the angular aesthetic of the first chair I drew. I know this one is going to be something that people can imagine relaxing into. And I guess this time it turns out I've just drawn it side on, which is fine. So this is going to be a kind of 2-dimensional representation, and I'll keep it nice and simple. And then just to see how it looks, I'll add in a kind of strengthening member across the bottom 2 legs, across the bottom of the legs. And now I've got 3 chairs on the page, and you know, I could keep going from there, and in fact I will. So I'll stop sharing just now. I hope that stopped sharing. That's what we want you to do for the next, I'm going to say 15 minutes. I think it's 7:15 on the clock that I'm looking at, so we'll go until 7 o'clock. And what I would recommend is that you go into your Coursework 1 Teams. So you can leave this meeting until 7 o'clock. Once we've finished explaining, go into those Coursework 1 Teams, and then we'd like to find different ways that people can sketch and share their sketches. So I hope everyone has access to at least a pen or a pencil and some paper or something they can write on. So we'd like you to start sketching in exactly that way, just getting as many ideas as you can down on the page. Then you can upload anything that you do to your Teams site. You can work as a group, coming up with ideas together on the page, or you can go into your individual sub-teams and all work individually. And then the other option, which I'm just going to share, it's just taking a while to share. You'll see on Moodle something about the 5-chair exercise, and I've made this light box for 5Chairs 2020, and any students can add images here. So you can take a picture on your phone and include it in this Lightbox gallery, and then we'll be able to see what you're working on. So at the moment, what we want to see are just lots and lots of sketch ideas for chairs. Really going to give you any more direction than that at the moment. We'll come back and talk about some of what that might mean and how we could focus in on specific things and specific ideas. But right now, I think our biggest hope is to get a lot of volume of sketching, lots and lots of people putting ideas onto the page. Alessio, do you want to add anything?
Yes, yeah, just one quick one. We've got a new student, Ben, joining us. So we've got Usama Abu. So welcome, Usama. I've been in email contact with Usama, and he requires a group. We have got a few groups of 3. So if it's okay with group 21, that's Jake Kitney, James Lockhart, Thomas Tippler. We're going to add Usama to subgroup 21. So at our end, we'll make sure that that can happen, so that when you break out into your rooms, Usama can join you guys. And what I'll do is just update on the chat so that you guys can also exchange contact details in a moment as well.
Fantastic.
Ben, are the students going to break out into their rooms?
Yes, if everyone can break out now into your individual coursework teams and start sketching chairs, and then we'd like to be able to see at least one output from each coursework team of, you know, a page of chairs, or however you want to put it together, but sketched ideas coming together from each team.
And we'll meet back here at 7?
Well, let's say now we'll meet back here at 7:05, which gives everyone 15 minutes.
Great, sounds good.
And Alessio, if you can put Usama's contact details in the chat, perhaps, then I can add him to the group.
I'll do that now, yep. Okay, I've just added that now, Ben.
Fantastic, thanks. And sorry, what group number was that? 21?
21.
Great. So I can see that a number of the teams are starting to fill up now. I can see meetings in about half of the teams. So if you could, the rest of you could go and if there's not a meeting started in your team already, you can be the one to start it, and then other people will join you, and you can start discussing how to get sketches onto paper.
And folks, just like last week, as a reminder, if you need to be reminded, just go back to the engineering design team and you should find that you've been assigned to a group on there, and then you can set that up.
There's a couple of groups who have started meetings in the breakout room. I mean, that's fine if it works, but I think it's better to go to your sub team for your individual group.
Excuse me, I have a question. The chairs, do we sketch on a paper or on Fusion? Because I was confused.
Yeah, good question, important question. Everything that we're going to do right now is about sketching on paper. And in fact, we kind of want people, you may keep working on Fusion for parts of the coursework and for catching up on things that you've done, but we kind of want people in the classes for the next couple of weeks just to almost forget all about Fusion. And these classes are about going back to basics, because in Fusion, and I guess we should talk about this when everyone's back, because it's a really important question. In Fusion, by the time you've started modeling something, you've because it's a complicated process, you've got a fixed idea about what it is you're designing. Whereas if you're sketching, you can just keep on coming up with new sketches, new ideas the whole time. So yeah, this is about sketching on paper.
It will be 3D, right?
Yeah, 3D, whatever. But I guess the key is to make it quick. We don't want people to be spending hours thinking about this kind of thing. We want them to be putting lots and lots of ideas down. So that's giving you new ideas.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Just answering that question about where to upload. I just need to remind myself what the That's the title of the topic. And then within that topic, you should see Lightbox Gallery, and I hope there'll be an option to add images and you can upload them there. I'm just going to see if I can change any settings to make that available to everybody. Sorry, these galleries used to just work that anyone could upload images, but perhaps that's not how it's working at the moment. Nathaniel, I'm just going to share my screen, and can you let me know if you see something similar to what I see? Because obviously we don't see the student experience always. So I see this option here to add images. Is that available on your version of that gallery? Ah, that's frustrating. In that case, what I'm going to say for now is if people could
Nathaniel, if it's no trouble, could someone share their screen just so maybe we could try and work it out? If you feel confident enough to do that. There's a share content button at the top of your Teams. So if anybody wants to share their screen, we can just see if we can diagnose the problem. Oh, thank you. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty clear that there's no upload option. Let me see if there's another option in Moodle that will allow us to upload images.
Thanks, Nathaniel. Really.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
You can probably stop sharing and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, I tried adding a chat, but I think that's also not quite the right functionality. It looks like something has changed on Moodle about what specifically students can and can't upload to. So instead, what we'll say is if anyone can add their image into the chat in this Teams call, that would be good as well. I don't know who wants to be brave and go first. There's bonus points for that, I'm sure.
Bear with me, I'll see what I can do.
Thanks.
Sorry, upload where, sorry?
In the chat here, you should be able to post images. Yeah, fantastic.
Okay, we'll try.
Great stuff, Jasir. That is exactly the kind of thing that we want to see.
Yeah,
And
Thank
you know,
you,
already some labeling, some kind of mechanical detail, and some ideas building off other ideas. I think all of those are excellent. I'm going to try and take a screenshot of my own page and add that in the chat just to
Just see, you've got some really nice perspective on those chair legs in both drawings. You can tell that there's a distance between them. So well done, nicely drawn.
I put my own sketch page up as well. You can see, as always, particularly if you look in the bottom left, I'm not very good at sketching, but I'm much more confident now since working with a design team for the last 5 years about making sure I get things down on the page, about labeling things up. This one in the middle, my daughter is having a bath right now. You might be able to hear her making noises in the background. So that's me just trying to sketch her bath seat to see if it gives me any ideas. And then also around that, I've kind of written down some other thoughts. Things like beanbags and park benches are relevant here. Feel free. Great. I'm just going to. See if. Larry, that's excellent as well. And kind of looking at things from different angles is a fantastic idea. Really good.
Sorry, so where do you send the design again?
In the chat on the right hand. Well, I guess it depends where on your screen everything is. But for me, I can look at the conversation associated with this meeting, and then there's a chat on the right hand side, and we can see some of what's coming up in there. Fantastic.
Oh wow.
Manju, are you sharing your screen there?
Sorry, I don't know. I don't know how to upload it from the phone. That's why.
Yeah, no, it was working.
Oh,
You could see it nicely on a shared screen, but now it's just gone a bit distorted on my computer. It was pretty close to success, I would say. And
so it won't let me upload it to the chat. It says message failed.
Okay, sometimes that might just be a connection thing, I think. With me, to put it in the chat, I used the snipping tool, and then I did copy, and then I did paste. So that might work. This is really good, and this is exactly what we wanted, is seeing people's sketches. I like that somebody has thought there of a wheelchair as being a kind of chair. Stephen, that's great. And sort of thinking of as many different contexts as possible is going to be a part of what we're doing here. I'm just going to share now some thoughts from previous years of the 5-chair challenge, and then we'll try a couple more interactive things, and then we'll finish with some completely different stuff. So this is one of the things that designers do a lot, is to start thinking about different people The wording might be a persona, and you know, already somebody's included a wheelchair as one of their designs, and so for people with reduced mobility, that's obviously really important and a key kind of chair. And then the more you can think about other people who aren't quite like you, the more you'll be a brilliant designer, I think. And it's really hard to do. It is hard to put yourself in the shoes of maybe somebody who's got struggles that you don't have, or who has life experiences that you don't have. And the key to it is really just to kind of always be paying attention and always be thinking about other people. I just want to jump from there to going back to looking at this textbook, and the page I want is page 62. So you can go even further than kind of a list of types of people. You can actually build up a whole persona for somebody. And you can see this example here. I don't think Isabel Johnson actually exists, but somebody has created this idea of who somebody might be. And you can see, okay, she works in a gallery, and she often gets frustrated by the repetition of her work and the mountain of paperwork she needs to deal with. Well, all of a sudden we can start thinking about designing a chair that might be somehow practical or useful for that kind of person. And so when you develop these personas, they can push you slightly further into thinking about people who aren't quite like you, which is a key part of design. Okay, let's just see a couple more things. As I say, we in other circumstances with full face-to-face teaching, we'd be asking you to do this using materials. One of the things that I was going to ask people to do in this class, that you can be doing kind of while we're talking and while we're going through the rest of the class, is you can still do some of these things. You can fold a chair. If you've got any paper available, you can try making a three-dimensional chair by folding up that bit of paper, and that's a fantastic exercise. And then the other thing you can do is try and build a chair from any objects that you have sitting around you at the moment. And again, that'll force you into doing all kinds of different things, because you almost certainly don't have, you know, the correct materials for model making, but you've almost certainly got things that you can put together to make a miniature version of a chair that you can visualize and then understand things from. And that can be a fun way to do things. So those are two exercises for you to think about. Folding something out of paper, again, a small scale version of a chair, and then making something from what's around you right now. These are the kinds of things that people made. I just want to flick through them very quickly. And then I just wanted to look at things that have gone right and wrong in previous years. Much of this is what we've talked about, that drawing is going and sketching is going to be central to this module. Some people, and I would probably put myself in this category, get an idea and then focus in on it and can't keep on going with new ideas all the time. And that tends to limit your design opportunities. So the more you can get away from just the one design you first thought of and into new ideas, the better it'll be. And in future weeks, we're going to talk about some things around creativity. And then these are questions about when you were sketching as much as anything, you know, what were the different iterations that you went through in your sketches? What did you learn from your sketches? Were there times when you thought, I can't possibly come up with any more ideas? And what things worked well within the sketching? So keep all of these kind of questions going throughout any sketching or making that you do in this module. Okay, the next thing that I want to do, just this is now slightly experimental, and it might all go wrong. But I once went to an exhibition about the Black Mountain College, which was an American art school and design school in North Carolina, and some very famous artists went through there or passed through there during its 20 years or so, 25 years of running. And one of the things that I learned about Black Mountain College was they wanted to push people, the boundaries of people when they were sketching. And so they told people, first of all, to sketch just as we've done. And then they said, okay, now sketch something with your weaker hand. So swap the pen across and do exactly the same thing. But, you know, for me, I'm left-handed, so it would be with your right hand. And then they said, okay, now sketch something with your eyes closed and see how that comes out. And again, every time you do any one of these exercises, you learn something new about sketching and drawing. So what I want to try for 5 minutes, and this could be carnage, is I'm going to share a whiteboard. And I want everyone to have a go at sketching chairs using your mouse, or whatever you can access. It might be a trackpad or something else. I don't know if the whiteboard will let you use touch screens, but again, that is another way to do it.
Guys, by the way, be patient. Sometimes the whiteboard takes a few minutes to load up, so don't panic if it doesn't load up initially.
So I can see the whiteboard now, and I can see people drawing on the whiteboard.
Yeah, answer.
Fantastic.
You can zoom in and out. This is great. So yeah, if everyone who can access the whiteboard can start trying to draw chairs using whatever kind of computer interactivity tool you have, then we should end up seeing some really interesting sketch ideas. And again, it should kind of break you out a bit of the first things that you thought about, because it's not very easy to draw in this context, I think. Liam, you've said, where is the whiteboard? Are there other people who can't see the whiteboard at the moment? It's clearly sharing for some people, but maybe not for everyone.
It's not something, I'm not supposed to find this on my computer then?
Yeah, you should be seeing it roughly where, if I was to share screen, where you would see my shared screen, you should be seeing a whiteboard at the moment with people.
Yes, I'm seeing your shared screen, your whiteboard.
Yeah, you can draw on
That's
that,
the one.
I hope.
Oh, can I?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Brilliant, thank you.
And you can zoom in and out, so it's almost like an infinite space.
I will say these whiteboards haven't, they're still slightly experimental and within Microsoft Teams. And one thing that we've heard happens is things just disappear. So you'll have to accept that this is about the process rather than the result. And don't worry too much if your chair happens to disappear. I'm really enjoying watching all of this happening live, even though it's definitely got a hint of a free-for-all about it. But I think it's great. I'm going to say we'll do another 3 minutes of this, and anyone who hasn't had a go yet, just try it to get that sense of what it's like to do this sketching in a different context. It's fun, and nobody can be critical about it. So there's no need to worry. Yeah, I'm not even sure if it is. I'm just reading the chat. I'm not even sure if it is people erasing other people's work, or if it's something to do with Teams.
No, it's
Just-
people erasing it.
Is it? Well, the battle rages on.
It's basically a battle.
You never know.
I will find your IP address.
The competition to draw quickly before somebody erases it might end up forcing you into some new ideas as well. So all of this I'm considering to be a good part of the process. I think that's been great. I'm really glad with how that's worked. And I'm going to stop sharing that screen if I can.
Yeah, I think very wise, Ben.
I feel like it's just on the edge of anarchy now. Great. So, you know, these are all different things you can do in terms of sketching just to keep the process going. I read something about Beyonce recently, that when she records an album, she has she books out a whole studio, and she has people within different spaces in the recording studio, different recording rooms within the studio. And as soon as she feels like the place she's in, you know, they're losing momentum, they're not coming up with new ideas anymore, she just goes and works with a new set of musicians in the room along the corridor. And that also, you could think about that as being part of the design process. What do you do when you feel like you've stopped coming up with ideas? How do you come up with more ideas? That's all about creativity. And I know that gets talked about. You'll have started working on that in design and practice last year, and we'll work on it again in engineering design this year. But that whiteboard, I think, was pushing people into quite a lot of creativity, because one of the things that I noticed was we started off with a lot of chairs like the first one I drew, with a kind of engineer's mentality of rectangles and cubes that all connect up. And then by the end, there was much more variation. It wasn't just four-legged rectangular chairs being drawn anymore. So although it seemed almost too simple, it did lead to new ideas, I think. Right. I think probably we can leave sketching there for the time being. Alessio, do you want to have any closing thoughts on sketching?
No, nothing comes to mind, Ben. Just, I guess, a big thank you to those of you who were not rubbing out and were actually trying. Yeah, as Ben said, we were trying that for the first time. So thanks for getting involved in that.
Yeah, thank you all. I think what we'll do next is this week's quiz. So if you go to the Moodle site, under weekly quizzes, you'll find week 5. And please, could everyone have a go at the week 5 quiz? And there's 7 minutes allowed for that, so we'll talk about it in about 7 minutes' time. There's a great question there from Liam about the quiz. I was going to type an answer, but I think I might speak an answer instead. So the question is there anything with the recommended reading that can help with this weekly quiz? These questions were all initially designed by people in the School of Engineering here as a way of testing people's engineering instincts. So the idea was that it's not really something that people can learn from a textbook, but it's almost more like, do they have a feel for some of these things? So, for example, I'm looking at a question about pulleys turning, and people who have built pulley systems in the past or worked with them in the past will have some intuition around that, more from a practical experience than from anything else, which is, as you suggest in your message on the chat. So I don't have any specific advice for what to do to kind of learn more about these quiz questions, except that I hope they're the kinds of things that will come up throughout your degree and in different contexts, in different modules. And it's maybe just partly about keeping your eyes open and realizing that some of these are slightly practical examples, not all of them. And they're a way of taking everything that you're learning and turning it into a kind of real world situation.
Brilliant, thank you.
Great. And another really good question from Abdurazak that we see a lot, and I think I've said I certainly feel it myself as well, that I'm not good at sketching. Is it a case of practice or creativity or both that I need to improve on? We would say, and everyone who teaches design would say, it's practice. And if you can keep on trying to put together 1 page of sketches every day for the rest of your time at Southbank, you'll be a brilliant sketcher at the end of it all. Even if at the moment you think you're horrendously bad at it. But putting in that kind of practice takes time and effort. I think the other thing that I'd really like to say is, please don't worry about being bad at sketching. As long as you're labeling your sketches and you're pointing out the things that you want us to see, and you're using sketching as a part of the design process, we're not going to mark people down for untidy sketches. We'd rather see lots and lots of sketching than have people be scared to show their sketches. Good questions in the chat. There's one about the pool ball, which we'll talk about. Good to see some scores in the chat as well. Question about the flagpole question. Interesting. I thought question 3, the pumping handle thing, was the hardest of them. So maybe we'll go through all of them in a couple of minutes.
Some good scores again. It's good to see no 1s and 2s.
Sorry, but I had a little problem with the internet, and here I'm gonna start the quiz. The quizzes now.
Okay.
No problem.
Thanks, Anderson. Okay, that's been 7 minutes. Maybe what we'll do, there might be other people like Anderson who weren't quite able to start at the same time as everyone else. So let's wait a few minutes to talk about the quiz answers, and we'll just talk a bit about the face-to-face teaching, I think, which we want to just clarify about. Alessio, do you want to lead on this? I think you've got the...
Yeah, no problem, Ben. So I haven't actually checked the spreadsheets today, but I saw that yesterday there was a lot of change. So thank you to those of you who responded to the announcement on the VLE. I'm just checking it now. We are intending to have the on-campus sessions for a few Wednesdays consecutively. We've sadly had to cancel tomorrow's one. So actually there's only one name there, so Dowie, if you wouldn't mind just placing your name on one of the other weeks, that would be greatly appreciated. And then from next Wednesday and the Wednesday after, we'll start the Wednesday sessions on campus. And just to briefly recap what was mentioned last week, the next 2 weeks, it's going to be the same session that Ben and I run. So you only need to attend one of those. So please don't put down your name on more than one. On the spreadsheet that's on the Teams folder, if you go to engineering design and then click on the general tab, I think that's the default place you'll be on. If you just click on files, you'll find the spreadsheet. And then following the next 2 weeks, we'll then run a second session for another 3 weeks. And on the spreadsheet, we've coloured those in a pale blue. And once again, you only need to pick one of those pale blue slots. This is completely optional, so nobody's going to be missing out by not attending. We just feel quite strongly that some on-campus activity could be beneficial. And we want to offer it to students who are keen to come back on campus and see each other. We'll ensure that it's all safe, of course, with social distancing in place and sanitation stations, etc., and wearing of masks. And we'll make sure that if anybody can't come, because we're aware that some of our students are in other countries, that we share what we're doing in these classes for engineering design as well. Does that kind of cover, I guess, an overview of it, Ben?
Yeah, exactly that. I guess maybe the thing for us to do next is just see if anyone's got questions about the face-to-face classes. Okay, great. We'll have some free time at the end anyway to ask questions about anything. So, you know, if something does pop up, do let us know. Oh yeah, question in the chat. We'll go over them in the classes afterwards. Yes, what we cover in the face-to-face classes, we'll also talk about in the remote classes, and it'll be the kind of thing that you can, I don't want to say do yourself at home, but you'll be able to do some parts of it at home as well. If for people who are working remotely entirely, you'll find that the ideas will transfer across to things that you can test out to do with building and making. Okay, let's have a look at the quiz answers, and then that's everything that we have to cover today. And then we can kind of have an open tutorial session for people with questions about the courseworks or questions about anything else in the module. So I'm going to share my screen, and I think we'll just go through things one by one, if that's okay with people. I just let my time run out, so I've got everything wrong according to the software, but I hope it won't affect any of the overall statistics. So I think most people remember this one from physics classes or from having used magnets, that like poles repel and opposite poles attract. So north and south in B will repel each other, whereas in A, both pairs will attract each other. And so the answer is A. There were some questions about this flagpole. People asking, how does this flagpole question work? The thing I think to look at is, first of all, the image about how things are fixed in the ground, and the width of the poles at the base is kind of the key understanding here. In some of my first year introduction to mechanical classes, and then certainly in solid mechanics classes this year, you'll be looking at cantilevers, beams that are fixed at one end and then loaded somewhere along their length. And that's really what we've got here, is 3 cantilevers. They're kind of tipped over sideways. They're at 90 degrees from the way you might normally see them. But nevertheless, the thing you might remember is that the maximum bending stress in a cantilever is at the root. It's at the point where it meets the wall. And so what you want is the one that has the thickest root possible, the widest beam at the point where it meets the wall. And in the answers here, you can start to see the highest stresses. For example, in this image, the high stresses are at the point where it meets the wall, and they're visibly higher stresses in, I guess, B and C, and they're lowest in A because it's the widest at the wall. So that's what's going on there. And, you know, these are the kinds of things that you can now, you've got all the skills to start testing some of this out in FEA as well, if you want, and to kind of see some of these same results that I'm showing in the answers. So, you know, have a think about how you would model this in Fusion and then how you do a test on it.
So a quick question about that one.
Yeah, sure.
In the drawing at the top, in the question itself,
yep.
In the cross section, it's the diagonals are opposite in C. Does that mean anything at all?
Yeah, it doesn't. I hadn't even noticed that, but you're right.
That threw me off a bit because I didn't see the difference in widths.
Exactly. It's one of those things that does, now that you say it, look like it ought to be important somehow. All I've done there is to use the cross-section function in Fusion to just exactly half the whole image. And it's interesting that that which I thought was a completely neutral function has given me some cross-hatching which can be confusing. So, you know, there's something about design there, that things that seem completely neutral as designs can in fact be non-neutral, and that's what we just found there. And there's also something about Fusion. Just remember that those cross sections might not be quite as clear to everyone as they are to you, because you know exactly where you took the cross section, but other people won't. Great question, thank you.
That cost me a point.
Sorry?
That cost me a point.
Yeah.
Never mind.
I mean, I guess I don't think anyone is going to get 40, and I don't think I would get 40 if I sat the exam. So don't feel bad about occasionally being confused by the questions. And again, the marks aren't counting for anything. This one, I don't know, I guess it's my favorite because I like drawing the system in Fusion. But it's interesting. The important detail is this hinged flap here, which is kind of hard to see maybe. But when you push the plunger down, this flap can lift up and the air can get out. So nothing happens when you push the plunger down. But when you pull the plunger up, the flap closes and it gets sucked firmly closed. And so when you pull the plunger up, you get some suction. And so if you move the handle up and down, nothing happens when you move it down, and you get suction when you move it up. And so it lifts up water, it pumps water into the larger vessel. If you can kind of visualize what's going on there, well done, because it's a kind of tricky bit of engineering understanding, I think. But if you can't, I would say go away, leave it, and then come back and look at it later in the week and see if having it in the back of your mind has helped to make sense of it. These ones here are like slightly tricky brain teasers. You have to keep counting and keep everything correct in your head. If this green one is turning anti-clockwise, this crossed belt will change direction. So this one turns clockwise and this one turns clockwise. The uncrossed belt keeps the same direction. So this one is anti-clockwise, but when you kind of play it through, that means this belt goes upwards here, and that means all three of those small wheels turn clockwise. And the animation is a bit clunky, but I think you can just about see all of that in the animation. And then some people didn't like the pool ball. Again, it's almost like a detailed observation question. The cue is striking the ball, I guess, on the right-hand side as you look at it. And if you do that, you can test this out on any pool table. If you hit the ball on the right-hand side, it gives it, first of all, obviously momentum in the right to left direction on this diagram, but it also creates a moment because there's some resistance where the ball meets the table, and the pushing point is offset from where the ball meets the table. That moment creates rotation in the pool ball, and the rotation in this case is going to be anti-clockwise, and that means when it hits the cushion over here, the anti-clockwise movement is going to push it in the direction of A. That's certainly one of those ones that if you haven't tried the experiment, it would be very hard to work it out from first principles, I think. You know, if you play a lot of snooker or pool, you would know that, I think, from intuition and from having used it, but it takes quite a lot of thought to work out exactly why it operates like that. So that can be a kind of useful thing to think about in general as well. Situations where you know something by intuition, what's the kind of engineering understanding behind it? And sometimes that's very hard to get to the bottom of. You know, riding a bike is a classic example of that, where lots and lots of people can ride a bike, but trying to explain how the bike stays upright is difficult. Fantastic diagram there. Yeah, that's exactly the diagram we want. Thanks, Nathaniel. Really good. So that might help people if you look at the diagram that Nathaniel's just put in the chat window. I'll take on anyone. And I think also
depends how hard you hit the ball.
The exact angle will depend how hard you hit the ball. That's correct. The direction, you know, it's going to go in the direction of A rather than B, however hard you hit it. But if you hit it quite softly, it'll be quite a big angle. And if you hit it quite gently, it'll be a shallower angle, I think. But again, that's more from intuition that I'm saying that than from engineering calculation. I'm not going to take on any challenges on 8-Ball Pool online.
I'll try that and let you know.
Exactly. Everyone, you know, at least you can give this a go next time you're at a pool table or similar and see what you get from it. I just want to say that diagram from Nathaniel, I think, is great. And again, that's a bit like sketching, right? Marking things onto a diagram is another part of the engineering design process. So, you know, be ready to do things exactly like that anytime you want to understand some engineering better. Okay, I think that is the quiz explained, so I'll stop sharing my screen, and that's 10 to 8. So it seems like a good time to say we're done with new information or new content in the class. But I think for people who'd like, we can stick around for 10 minutes to answer any questions, really.
It's a bit of an open forum, folks, so feel free to either use the chat or unmute your mics. It could be related to either coursework or perhaps a diffusion problem.
Sir.
Yeah.
We have signed up for B34, and they said that we need to bring passport badges, workshop passport badges.
Oh, okay. Yes. Sorry. So let me just give some backstory here for everybody. The workshops are open on a sign-up basis, and that means about 12 students at a time can go into the main prototyping workshop, BRB34, and work on projects in there. And so one group of students had said, could they go in and do that and work on their project work in the university? And we sent them the information about how to sign up. But I've just realized from exactly what Hasib said that it's going to need the badge for that workshop. And that's something that we don't have yet, or that students in this class probably won't have yet, except for maybe a small number of students who have got it working on extracurricular activities. I think then what I'd say is you will probably find that you can work in BRB48 if you do come in, where you don't need a badge to go and work in there, and you can do kind of assembly work. But what I do is just email me, and I can check the timetable for you and find a room that you can go into. And then what we'll also do that we've done sometimes in previous years is when they are running sign-up classes for that prototyping workshop, we'll let you know about it, and we'll give people the opportunity to get that badge in the end. But you do the metalwork badge, but this is effectively the woodwork badge that you would need to go into B34. And I'm sorry, I'd forgotten that was going to be a requirement. So to summarize, if you want to work in university, email me and I'll try and find a space that you can work in the Borough Road basement.
Yep, that's fine, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, a question I've got. ABAS has managed to get hold of some copies of some recommended reading, some hard copies for the part-timers to be issued. Will I have any problem going into university and getting hold of these if I don't have a badge or anything? Just arrange it with ABAS and the reception and whatnot?
Yeah, what's the current? There should be a system at the moment for getting a badge as well, I think, once you're there, which might be a useful thing to do anyway. Alessio, you might know more than me at the moment.
Yeah, I believe if you turn up to the campus, there's I'd start with the library. There are passes being given out, so I think it's in the form of a bracelet. Just to get you access into the buildings if you haven't got an ID card yet. So that is possible, but I'd also make Abbas aware of a day where you're intending to go in so that he can make sure that he's around as well, so that there's a plan B. So if he can't get in, maybe you could arrange just to meet at a particular reception. But yes, there's temporary bracelets available if you haven't got your ID card in the post yet as a direct entry student.
Brilliant, thank you.
And I think, Jamie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I've got a question, but well, not a question, more of a problem. I should have told you about this last week. I can't log into the Mahara ePortfolio.
Okay. Do you know what stage does it go wrong at?
Well, the details are just the same one when you log into Moodle, don't you?
Yeah.
When I try that, it doesn't let me log in.
Okay.
Okay.
For some reason, it just continually says I've exceeded the maximum login attempts, and this has been locked up for up to 5 minutes, but this has been happening for 2 weeks.
Okay, Jamie, I think this is a student IT help desk question. I'll try and find the email address, but I think, Ben, do you agree? That's
I think that's right. Are you using, Jamie, are you using the link towards the bottom right of the Moodle page?
Yeah.
As your point of entry? Okay, yeah, in that case, I think it's an ICT support question.
Let me just put the email address in the chat, Jamie. If you bear with me, I'll find it.
Yeah, I've already tried the set the new username and password, and I've typed in my LSBU email, but it doesn't give me the email for some reason.
But you can log into the VLE. That's
yeah,
not a problem.
Everything else is fine apart from the portfolio.
Sure. So that's what you would need to just explain, exactly as you've done with us. Just explain that to the IT service desk. There's a student-facing one, and they can sort that out. Seems like there's a bit of a lock that's on your Mahara account for some reason. So got it.
Yeah,
and email address in the chat.
I mean, do come back to us. You know, if it's not working, we'll keep trying to find ways to help. But it seems like at the moment that sounds like an ICT thing, so that's the place to start. Okay, that's. Oh yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Ben.
Yeah.
Just building upon Liam's problem regarding the books that have been held at the university. Is there any way, if we could maybe pay for postage, or is there any way the university can just help us out with sending the books out to us because we can't get there?
I'm not sure is the answer.
I'm not sure.
Just the thought, really.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a totally reasonable thought. I think what it would need is if it's Abbas at the moment who has the books, or whoever has the books, could try and liaise with the post room. And I know the people in the post room at LSBU are really helpful. So it might be something that works that way. Maybe I would sort of request that on an individual basis from whoever's got the books and say, could you do this through the LSBU post room? But I don't know. It sort of depends on the scale. You know, I think to do it for 120 students would start to become just a really practically complicated thing to do. But it might be possible for a small number of students who need it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Thank you.
No, it's
on that point, I think there's only 8 or 10 people on the list to get copies that I've seen, so it's maybe not such a huge task.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll pick this up with Abbas, and I'll get him to send out a message, maybe with 2 or 3 options on there. So one option could be he comes in on a certain day, and he can just pass them out to you. And if that's possible to, with the majority of students on the module, that would be great. And then another option could be just to explore, if it is a small group of just part-time students, to explore liaising with the post room to see if those could be posted out potentially.
A third option that I heard, and admittedly I heard it from a student who wanted me to do this, so maybe it's true, maybe it's not, is you can leave things, it might be possible to leave things at the security office in Borough Road, and they can be collected from there. So there might be some way to make that useful, but I think I'm making work for somebody else here, so I should shut up and not do that. Liam.
Yeah, sorry. I received an email earlier in the week, or maybe last week, and it was referring to being given an individual tutor. So Ravi was the guy who's been assigned to me. What's the plan with that? Sorry, I know time's knocking on.
Alessio, that's your.
Yeah. So Liam, we run a personal tutoring scheme in the school. In year 1, the meetings are compulsory. So the students in this group that joined us last year, they would have met with their personal tutor twice in the year. In year 2, the idea is that the meetings aren't compulsory, but we'd still like students to engage with their personal tutor. So even if it's just a quick email from time to time to say, hi, things are going okay. Yeah, generally, no worries. But the idea of the personal tutor is it's somebody that's there in the background, Liam. So if you've got any questions, any concerns relating to your studies, or anything that might be affecting your studies, you ideally go straight to your personal tutor with those, who should be able to answer most questions. And if they can't, they can certainly signpost you in the right direction. So it's a bit of a safety net that hopefully you don't need. But it's there throughout your time here at LSBU.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, I have a feeling that's a good place to leave things. Thanks everybody for your participation in the class. It's been really good to see you all, and we'll see you again same time next week, I suppose. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I've just sent the
Thank you.
email to the
Thank you.
link that Alicia
Bye bye.
Thanks, sir.
Have a nice one.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.